today I'm going to be showing you guys my eyeshadow palette collection and the techniques that I have in my collection as of now. I've also already decluttered and got rid of some eyeshadow palettes that I've had in here that I haven't really used all that much. So I'm going to just go through the ones that I currently do have and that I've been using or like rotating and been using and all that good stuff. So if you want to see my eyeshadow palette collection, then just keep on watching. So this is my drawer here. I have a total of 5 drawers here. The second drawer is what I use for my eyeshadow palettes, and I use it for my blushes and bronzers as well. But this video is not going to be my entire makeup collection and my makeup setup. This is going to just be primarily my palettes. So I'm going to start with some of the palettes that I have up top, because up top I have some palettes up here that I've been using or that I've recently got and I've been just starting to use and stuff like that. So I'm going to start with those first. So these are the ones that I've recently purchased that I've been playing with and I haven't really filmed with them yet. So the first palette that I'm going to talk about is the Tati Beauty palette. And this is the pressed palette, and this is the volume 1. I haven't even used this palette as of yet. I'm having trouble taking it out. I haven't used it yet. The packaging is really nice and smooth and I really like it. It has gold lettering. There's been plenty of reviews on this palette, so I haven't really done a review because I'm sure that there's been plenty of reviews. I like this palette because I like it that the mirror is super big. That's my camera, me filming for you guys. So my mirror is super big and it has, the top part has some pressed glitters. And then there's some other glitter shimmery shades and then some other shimmery shades, and the bottom are like pretty much neutral shades. Like these are like neutral and matte shades. So I really like what I've been seeing people create using this palette, so that's the reason why I purchased it, because I wanted to try it out and see how it worked for me. So I ordered this palette, but like I said, I haven't really done a video with me using the palette or a tutorial for you guys, which I'll probably do this week, because as you know, like everyone's been home like in quarantine, so no one's been leaving their house. So I'll probably do a video like a just because eyeshadow palette video. So I like to keep this palette up top because that's where I keep all the palettes that I'm trying to actually use and figure out if I like it or if I don't like it. So those are primarily where my newer shadows go. They go up top. So also I have the Morphe Jeffree Star palette, and I've used this palette a total of like 2 or 3 times. This one comes with a mirror. It's nice and pink. Pink is one of my favorite colors, so I really was drawn to the palette. I used some of the colors, like this color I've used a lot, as you can see. And I've used this one also. I also have a makeup tutorial on it. I like it that it has some pressed glitters right here, right here, right here, right here. And then there's some mattes in it as well. So I really like those colors as well. So this is a Jeffree Star palette that I'm still using currently. And the next palette that I'm going to talk about is, this is my oldie but my goodie, and this is my Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette, the number 1. And as you can see, this is the first Jaclyn Hill palette where she wrote a dedicated message to all her subscribers. And I've used this palette a little bit. As you can see, the pans are kind of like used and stuff like that. So I've really played with this palette. I really enjoyed this palette just because it has a lot of neutral and warm shades. And I really like neutrals and warm shades. If you've been watching my channel for a while, like, you know that I really like to do looks with a lot of neutrals, and I try to step out of my comfort zone and use some more colory colors that I'm really not used to using, but I want to just like step out of my comfort zone so that you guys get different looks and it's not the same looks each and every time. So this is the oldie, the Jaclyn Hill Volume 1. and I leave that up top as well. And then I also have the Jaclyn Hill palette, the volume 2 from Morphe as well, and this palette I recently got also. And there's a message as well to her subscribers, to all my loving subscribers who have supported me all these years. This one is for you, Jaclyn Hill. So I've used the neutrals, as you can see, a ton, and this is what this palette looks like. It has a ton of neutrals, and it has a lot of bold colors as well, which is not too out there boldy, but it's like colors in it. And then there's some burgundies, some reds, some pinks, some purples, there's neutrals up top. So that's why I like this palette, and I kind of felt like this palette was different from the first one, because the first one had a lot of greens and stuff in it. This one doesn't have one shade of green in it, so it was kind of different. So that's why I purchased this palette. So those 4 are the palettes that I keep up top, and I keep it up top with my on my vanity, just because I'm still going to get to use those palettes, and I keep them right up top, right on my vanity next to my candle. Right now I'm burning the Bath and Body Works ginger spice gingerbread, and I actually love that, and I keep my palettes right in the corner. So we're gonna get into the other palettes that I have in my drawer right here. So the first row, I'm gonna start with this row over here, and this one is my Makeup Revolution. I don't know why I'm so out of breath, it's like weird. The Reloaded Provocative, and this is the palette. I've actually done a one brand tutorial using this palette recently. So as you see, I used the pinkish colors when I did my tutorial, and I used some of this red one up top, this burgundyish color, and I really enjoyed this palette. For the price, this palette was very, very good, and I really enjoyed doing the makeup look that I did with this palette, just because I feel like it compared to a lot of my high-end regular palettes, opposed to it being a drugstore brand, and I actually really like that, and I'm trying to incorporate more drugstore brands and my like looks that I'm doing for you guys. So I really enjoyed this palette. The next palette I'm going to talk about is, this is the Ulta Beauty palette that I actually got as a gift from someone, and it's kind of it has blushes in it, and the blushes are kind of broken from me shifting around so much, and these are like the little colors that I have in there. I haven't really used this palette at all, actually. Like, it's just been sitting in my collection, and I was gonna give it away, but I just wind up just keeping it. So that's that. The next palette I have is my Anastasia Beverly Hills Lavish palette. And this palette looks like this, and this is a oldie but a goodie, and I use this palette a lot when it first came out, and I like it that it's nice and slim, and it's like easy for me to like carry with me if I want to travel and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed this palette as well, and as you know, the shadows are pretty good just because it's an Anastasia palette. I feel like their eyeshadows are primarily like really good. So that's one of the palettes that I have. The next palette I'm going to talk about is my Modern Renaissance palette. I absolutely love this palette. When I first got this palette, I was debating whether to get it. I finally got the palette, and I actually love the palette once I picked it up. At first, when I wanted to get it, it was sold out a lot of places, and then I was able to get it. As you can see, I have abused this palette. I have used this palette a ton, and I actually really like this palette so much, because I feel like it's very versatile and you can do a lot of looks with this palette. And I really enjoy these silverish goldish colors here, these shimmer colors in the middle, because I feel like you can do like reds or like this burgundyish color, and then you can put some sparkle and like make it like into something else. I feel like there's so many looks that you can do with this palette, and that's why it's one of my #1 faves. So this is one of my favorite palettes in my collection, and this is the Anastasia Beverly Hills, the Modern Renaissance. The next palette I'm going to talk about is the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette. And I purchased this palette when it first released. And it's like pinkish color, orange, and it smells like peaches as well. It smells very, very good. And when I purchased this palette, I ordered it actually. And then my fiance wound up getting it for me for a holiday or something like that, so I wind up having 2 palettes. But this palette, I like this palette, but I would like to try to use this palette a little bit more than when I do use it, because like I said, there's certain palettes that are like my everyday, like I swear by, and there's certain palettes that I'll dip into every now and then, and this is one of the palettes that I'll dip into every now and then, because as I go through my palettes, you're gonna see that I have a bunch, like a good amount of palettes in my collection, so it's kind of hard for me to use the same palette every single day and stuff like that. I try to rotate through them so like I'm using them. So the next palette that I'm going to talk about is going to be my Too Faced Chocolate Bar palette, and this is the first chocolate bar, the regular chocolate bar palette, and this one looks like this. As you see, I still have the paper in it, and it has like a bunch of looks that you can do with this palette. So you can do a bunch of looks, and it shows you in the cue card like what colors you can use to achieve this look. So this is the palette, and it's very neutral gendered. It's very neutral. It has peaches and like basic colors, and I would recommend this palette to anyone who's just starting makeup, because it doesn't have a ton of colors in it, but it has the basic colors that you would usually use to do a natural regular makeup look. So I would recommend this palette. The next palette that I'm going to talk about is my Urban Decay Smoked palette, and this was also a palette that I got as a gift as well, and I really enjoy using this palette. It's dark colored. I use it for smoky eye. I use this palette every now and then when I want to do a dark smoky eye look, and I really enjoy using this palette as well. And this is the Urban Decay Smoky Naked palette. The next palette that I'm going to talk about is going to be the Masquerade Mini by Juvia's, and this palette is so good as well. Like, people tend to not talk about Juvia's Place palettes, but these palettes are so pigmented. They are like very pigmented, they're very bright, vibrant, and they will show up on your eyes. These are the type of palette that if you do not use any type of primer, it really wouldn't really make a big deal or matter all that much, because this palette is very vibrant. The colors are very vibrant, and I'm gonna swatch one color for you right now, which is gonna be this blue one. And look how pigmented it is on my finger, and that's from one swipe. And I'm gonna put it onto my hands. Do you see how pigmented that is? These palettes are very pigmented, and I really enjoy this palette as well. And I dip into this palette every now and then as well when I want to find like a pop of color and I don't want to mix so many colors and use so many colors for my makeup look. I will tend to reach for this palette. And this palette is not as expensive either. It's very reasonable, and I really enjoy this palette. The next palette that I'm going to talk about is the Stila in the Light. And again, this is a very neutral palette. Basic colors. This is very small. I like this palette to put in my makeup bag when I'm traveling, just because it has basic colors that will go with a lot of attires and clothing that you use. And Stila is a very good brand as well. The next palette I'm going to talk about is my Androgyny, and this is from Jeffree Star, and this is my Jeffree Star palette, and it's hot pink, and it has a gold star, and like these are the colors in it. And as you can see, I've used this palette a lot as well. I like Jeffree Star eyeshadow palettes. I feel like the colors are pretty pigmented, and I really enjoy using them. So this is my Jeffree Star palette that I used. and I would recommend this palette as well, just because I like the color payoff and the pigments, and I really enjoy using it. That's my son. He just woke up from a nap, so I hear him probably trying to come upstairs. So he's probably trying to follow his sister to the shower. So the next palette I'm going to talk about is the Urban Decay Gwen Stefani palette. That's Emma. Gwen Stefani palette. And this is what it looks like. It's very neutral. It has some glitters. The whole bottom are glitters and shimmers. And then there's some neutrals and some other sparkles in it. So this is a very nice palette too. I got this palette a while back. And it's an oldie but a goodie. And it's from Urban Decay. This is my MAC pink pod thing that I started that I never finished. So I just have a pink and a purple shadow in here. I finished a whole other pod, but I just gave it away to a family member just because I wasn't using it all that much. So I might try to fill this whole entire one again. I'm not really sure yet. The next palette I have is my Violet Voss Pro eyeshadow, and this is the Holy Grail one. And I believe that I got this palette at IMATS, which, if you don't know what IMATS is, it's the International Makeup Artist Trade Show. It's usually every year in April. I haven't gone for the past 2 years just because I had my son, I was pregnant, it's just been a lot going on. So I just haven't gone, but this is another very, very good palette that I really enjoy using as well. As you can see, I've dipped into a couple of these colors very so often, and I really enjoy this palette too. The next palette is my Tarte palette, and this is my Tarte regular basic palette. This is a neutral palette. It's very slim, as you can see. It's thin, it's easy for travel, and you can just package it really nice because it's so slim and small. So I really like this palette for travel. The next palette is my Lorac Pro Mega 2. And it looks like this. It has a bunch of shades in it, but the pods are really, really small. But there's a bunch of different shades in there. There's some neutrals, there's some blacks, there's some blues, there's some glitters. So this is a very nice palette as well. If you want to have a palette with a bunch of different shades and colors so that you can do different looks, this will be the perfect palette for that, because there's so many different colors and the pans are small, and the palette is kind of like in the bigger side, but it's also kind of thin as well, so it's good for packaging. The next palette is my Kat Von D Metal palette. And this palette is so good as well. I keep saying so good, but that's the reason why these palettes are in my collection still, because I enjoy using them. So the top part, these are all glitters on top, like glitters and shimmers, and the bottom are matte colors. So I really like that this palette had a top row for the glitters and a bottom row for the mattes, because that's a really good thing when you're trying to create different looks, that you want to have some mattes and you want to have glitter, but you don't want to have glitter all over your face. So this is a really nice palette as well. The next palette that I'm going to talk about is going to be my Anastasia Master palette. So this palette I use very, very often as well. If you can see, I'm hitting pan on 5th Avenue because that's one of my favorite colors that I usually use. So this palette is so nice as well. It's very neutral, and it has a couple of matte shades, and then it has a couple of shimmers. 5th Avenue is my favorite color in this palette. That's why I'm going pan on it. So yes, and this is the Master by Mario palette, and it's pretty small as well. The next palette is my Anastasia Rivera palette, and this is what it looks like. It has like some pinks and it's kind of bright as well. This is one of my bright palettes that I like to take out in the summer and stuff like that, because that's when I usually tend to wear brighter colors, and I like to wear my makeup more vibrant and not so much on a neutral side, just because it's so nice, the sun's out, and it's like the time for you to be able to express yourself and not in a neutral way. That's one of the reasons why I completely got into makeup, is because I enjoy doing my makeup, and I feel like doing your makeup is a form of expression, and I love to express myself, and I just like to do makeup. It's fun for me. Because I get a lot of questions from coworkers like, how early do you wake up to do your makeup? I don't really wake up that early to do my makeup, is because I enjoy doing it, and I've learned how to do so much things with it that it doesn't take me that long. Okay, so on to the next palette. This is my ColourPop palette. I've done a tutorial using this palette, or I've done a giveaway. I think I did an unboxing with this palette, and I like this palette as well. It's very small, and the color payoff is very, very good. ColourPop is one of my very, very good brands that I really enjoy using, and I will keep using. This next palette is my Anastasia Artist palette, and this is an oldie but a goodie as well. This is another Anastasia palette that has a couple of darker shades, is like more on a darker side, and I would like to use this palette more often than I have been using, so I'm gonna try to incorporate this palette a little bit more. The next palette is my Urban Decay Electric palette, and this is one of the palettes that I tend to go towards in the summer. As you can see, it's very, very bright, and I love bright colors like I mentioned in the summer. So this palette is a palette that I tend to go to more in the summer, just because I do more bright, vibrant eye looks. So that's the Urban Decay Electric palette. This next palette is my Alyssa Edwards Anastasia palette, and this is more on the bright side as well. I have used this palette a little bit, but I haven't used it as much as I would like to use it. So now that summer's coming around, like, I will be using this palette a little bit more. The next palette is one of my oldie palettes, and this is my Too Faced Chocolate Bar. And if I am not mistaken, I believe that I have two of these, because I already showed you guys one of the ones that I have, and I hit pan on one of the shades right here. So I have two of these, because one was backup, because I really enjoyed this palette when it first released. So I picked up two of them. So the next palette is going to be my Lorac Pro, and this is my Lorac Pro 1, and this is like basic neutrals. I used to use this palette all the time. As you see, I hit pan in the color Mauve, because I use this palette so much. The bottom row has a bunch of glitters and shimmers. I'm trying to zoom in for you guys. And the top part has a lot of neutrals. The next palette that I'm going to talk about is my Naked Urban Decay, and this is my very first Naked palette. So it was very close to the heart, so I didn't give away this palette. And this was one of the palettes that I used a lot when I first started doing makeup, and I still tend to go to this palette. The next palette is my Chocolate Bar palette, and this is what it looks like. It's little hearts. I thought that the presentation of the palette was very cute when it first released, because each pan is hearts, and it has some glitters and some neutrals as well. So this is a palette that I would definitely use as a first timer starting out with doing makeup, because the colors are pretty neutral and it's not very bright. Because I feel like with bright colors, you can sometimes mess up your eyeshadow looks if you're not sure how to put them on and how to mix them and blend them and stuff like that. It could be a hot mess if you're not sure how to play with them. So I would recommend this as a first time palette. This is one of my Z palettes, and this has some eyeshadow palettes that I put in for Makeup Geek when Makeup Geek was around. So this was my palette that I used for that. The next palette that I'm going to talk about is my Huda Beauty palette, my Texture Shadows palette, Rose Gold Edition, and this is what the palette looks like. I have a look on this palette on my channel, and I enjoyed using this palette as well. As you can see, I have pressed pigments on the top. There's some neutrals going all the way down, and this is a very nice palette as well. I'm coming close to the end. I have 2 more palettes. So this palette that I'm going to talk about is my Beauty Killer from Jeffree Star, and this is what it looks like. And this is also one of my palettes, one of the first palettes that I got from Jeffree Star. I think I have like 2 of them, and I enjoyed using this palette as well. As you see, I'm hidden pan on the color Courtney because I use that color a lot. For my final palette that I have here, this is my Alice Through the Looking Glass palette from Urban Decay, and I really liked this palette when it first came out. It's kind of bulky, but it doesn't really bother me. I always have trouble forgetting how to open this palette just because it's so much bigger, and it opens up. It has a big mirror. Then you can open this up and it pops out like a butterfly. It's super cute. The presentation is very, very cute. And you can close it and then you pull out this part and it has like shadows. It's very, very cute. Very bulky, but very, very cute. So this is my palette from Alice Through the Looking Glass. And this came out with, I think around when the movie came out. So that's it. So I'm out of breath right now, guys. I've just showed you guys my current beauty palettes or makeup palettes that I own after I did a declutter. So those are all my oldie palettes that I enjoy using and I still use on an everyday basis. I love these palettes, and yes, I was able to show you guys a couple of the colors for the palettes so you guys would be able to see what I was speaking about as far as colors and things like that. So I hope you guys enjoyed seeing my eyeshadow palette collection, and I'm hoping that the next video will be my makeup collection and showing you guys everything that I have. So I will see you guys in the next video, and make sure you guys are staying safe and staying inside and practicing social distance so that we can get out of this whole rut that we're in and everything will be fine. And I hope everyone's safe. I'm sorry that you guys didn't get to see me in the camera because I look crazy. Like, I have my robe on still, like I'm not even dressed, I'm wearing slippers still. Yeah, so it's the hot mess right now. So yes, so if you're not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe right down below. I would really appreciate it. Leave a comment, give this video a big thumbs up, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.